It had been exactly 10 years, 3 months, and 16 days since the last time I looked into her eyes. 10 years of carrying memories like open wounds. It all started with an unexpected message on my phone. It was a stuffy Tuesday, late afternoon, and the buzz of a WhatsApp notification cut through the silence of my apartment. "Hey, it's weird to send this after so long, but can we see each other?" My heart leaped in a way I hadn't felt in a very long time. It was her. The woman who had shattered my soul without a goodbye, without an explanation. And even with all the pain, I replied, "We can." Because even after everything, a part of me still needed to understand. The night before our reunion was unbearable. I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't shut off. I replayed scenes from the past like an old movie you watch knowing the ending, but you can't stop watching. The first time we met was in a crowded college hallway. She was wearing a light blue shirt, her hair carelessly tied up, and she had the most intense eyes I had ever seen. She had a faint scent of lavender mixed with printer ink, and she bumped into me as if on purpose. "Sorry," she said. But her smile, that smile was enough to make the ground fall out from under me. In the following months, everything happened fast. Lunches turned into laughter. Laughter turned into secrets. And secrets turned into stolen kisses at the door of my dorm. We both knew it was dangerous. She was 5 years older, about to graduate, and I was just a lost freshman trying to figure out who I was in a world that wasn't very accepting of girls who fell in love with other girls. But with her, everything made sense until the day she left. No letter, no message, no warning. Just an emptiness and a longing that swallowed me whole. Seeing that face again, after so much time, was like opening an old letter with trembling hands. We chose a quiet cafe downtown. I arrived early, as always. The place smelled of baked bread and aged wood, and the background playlist was some old, soulful song about second chances. I was shaking inside. I watched the door as if waiting for a ghost. And then she walked in. 10 years older, 10 years more beautiful. Her hair was shorter now, a few more lines around her eyes, but she had the same way of biting her lower lip before she spoke. "Hey," she said, and her voice still had that sweet tone that unraveled my logic. "You look beautiful." I smiled, not knowing how to respond. It was surreal to see her there, alive, real, after spending so much time wondering if she had forgotten me, if I had imagined it all. We sat across from each other, and for a few seconds, only silence spoke. Her cup trembled slightly on the table, and I felt she wanted to say something that might just break me. I started, "Why did you disappear? Why did you leave me without even a note?" She looked away. I was a coward. I was immature. I was weak. She swallowed hard. I was scared. Scared of coming out, scared of my family, scared of the future, scared of hurting you. And I ended up hurting you anyway. Her words were like daggers, but I needed to hear them. I needed to understand. "You left me in pieces. I thought I did something wrong, that I was the problem." My eyes filled with tears. She shook her head, her own eyes welling up. "The problem was never you. I loved you, more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone, but I was a coward." In that moment, time stopped. I wanted to scream, to hug her, to run away, all at the same time. 10 years compressed into that single instant. The pain, the nights spent crying alone, the letters I never sent, the messages I wrote and deleted. I took a deep breath, trying to find strength. "You say you loved me, but you left. And now, after all this, why did you ask me here?" She hesitated. "Because I needed to ask for your forgiveness. And because there's something you need to know." My eyes widened. That something seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 answers. But before she could say anything, the waiter interrupted with our order. She took a sip of her coffee, looked deep into my eyes and said, "But before anything else, thank you for coming. I know you didn't have to." I didn't know if I felt gratitude or anger. I only knew I wanted to understand, even if it broke me all over again. If you've ever lived through something like this, a reunion that drags you back to an unresolved past, comment below. I waited 10 years too. And if this story touched you in some way, subscribe to the channel now. Next, you'll understand why that meeting changed everything, and what she revealed to me next destroyed me from the inside out. She took a deep breath, like someone preparing to dive into an abyss. Her silence was a muffled scream between us, and the clatter of silverware in the background, the conversations at other tables, all seemed distant. "I got married," she said, without looking at me. My stomach dropped. A part of me had already suspected it, but hearing it from her own mouth was a harsh dose of reality. "To a man," she added, and for a second, my body froze. My heart wanted to race, but my chest felt too tight to let anything move inside. It was 7 years ago, right after I ran away from everything. I thought it was what was expected of me. I thought that maybe if I followed the script, it would all make sense. But it didn't. My throat went dry. I reached for my water glass with trembling hands, trying to keep my composure. "And does it make sense now, after 10 years?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. She looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't arrogance nor guilt. It was pain, a pain that was perhaps just like mine. "I never forgot you," she whispered, "not for a single day. Even when I was with him, even on trips, at parties, at family lunches, you were always there. Right here." And she placed her hand over her chest. I wanted to hate her. I swear I did. But it was impossible to hate someone who carried the same wound as I did. "So why now?" I pressed. "Why did you decide to look for me now, of all times?" She lowered her eyes, as if carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Because I'm getting a divorce. Because I was diagnosed with cancer. And because I don't want to leave without telling you the truth." Those words tore me apart inside. The world around me blurred. Cancer, divorce, truth. I didn't know what hurt more. The possibility of losing her again, or the cruel irony of only finding her again when it might be too late. "Are you in treatment?" I asked, trying to process it. She nodded slightly. "Yes, it's still early, but it made me think about what I left behind, about everything I never said." My chest was on fire. What was this I was feeling? Anger, love, pity, a desire to turn back time? It all swirled into a confusion so intense it made me want to run out of there. But I stayed, because deep down I had always waited for this moment. And even though it wasn't like in my dreams, it was real. I saw in her eyes a plea for help that went beyond pride, fear, or shame. And without knowing what to do with any of it, I reached my hand across the table. She touched it gently, like someone touching a memory. "Did you come find me just to tell me this?" I questioned. She hesitated before answering. "No, I came because, despite everything, I still love you." My heart clenched. It was as if the 20-year-old girl I used to be was hearing those words for the first time. But now, in my 30s, I had learned that love isn't always enough. Loving me after everything that's happened, it's not fair. "Not to me, not to you," I said, a lump in my throat. "I learned to live with your absence. I rebuilt myself on top of the void you left behind. Do you have any idea how much that hurt?" She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I do, because I lived through the same pain, even while beside someone else." I didn't know if that was a comfort or a tragedy. I just knew this conversation was stirring up everything I had spent years keeping buried. "Do you think I can just forgive you? Start over?" I asked, in a tone that sounded more like a desperate plea than an accusation. She took a deep breath. "I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that all of it was real, that you were my truest love, and that if this is my last year here, I wanted to spend it with the truth spoken." We fell silent, a silence so thick you could hear my own heartbeat. And right there, at that table in that old cafe, I realized time doesn't heal everything. It numbs it. It disguises it. But some wounds wake up with a look, a phrase, a memory. And she, with all her flaws, was still my biggest memory. I don't know how long we sat there, but when I stood up, I looked at her with tenderness. "Thank you for having the courage to come, but I need time to figure out what to do with all of this." She nodded. "I understand. Just let me know if I can still call you once in a while." I smiled, a bittersweet taste in my mouth. "You can, but no promises, no plans, just truth." She smiled back, and that smile, even after all this time, could still undo me. The days that followed were a blur of thoughts, memories, and unanswered questions. I tried to stick to my routine, to feign normality, but a familiar scent, a random song on the radio, or a badly made coffee was enough to bring her back to mind. It was as if my soul was in limbo, caught between what we were and what we could be. I didn't know what was worse, having found her again after so many years, or realizing that despite everything, there was still love, a love that was bruised, silent, but stubbornly alive, and that ate away at me. I kept asking myself, is it possible to rebuild something that was abandoned for so long? Or do some wounds really need to heal without a return? She started sending me short texts, nothing invasive. Just, dreamed of you today, or remembered that day at the beach. Sometimes, a photo of a flower we used to see on the trail near the university. I would read them, feel a strange warmth in my chest, and not reply. But I didn't block her, because deep down, a part of me wanted to keep that connection alive, even if only through messages. Until one overcast, rainy, and melancholic afternoon, much like our last encounters, she wrote, "There's a place I'd like to take you, just once. I promise I won't ask for anything else." It took me a while, but I eventually said yes. The truth is, my curiosity was screaming louder than my self-preservation. She came to pick me up. Her car smelled of lavender, the same scent as her perfume from years ago. The radio played a soft instrumental, and she seemed more at ease than before. "It's the old trail, remember?" she said with a shy smile. I nodded silently. It was a place where we used to walk when we wanted to escape the world. A hidden path between trees and streams, with slippery rocks and moss everywhere. We walked in silence for a few minutes, listening only to the sound of wet leaves under our feet and the birds in the distance. Suddenly, she stopped and opened a backpack. She pulled out a small, dark wooden box. "I want to show you something." She opened the box, and inside were letters, many letters. "I wrote to you every year, on every one of your birthdays, every New Year's Eve. I never sent any of them. I didn't have the courage, but I wrote them." My heart felt like it was about to leap out of my throat. I picked one up, dated 2016. "Today would have been your birthday. I wonder if you still like orange cake with crystallized sugar frosting." I read aloud and was swallowed by a mix of nostalgia and sadness. She handed them all to me. "They're yours. They always were, even if you never read them." I sat down on a rock, the box in my lap, and she stood beside me, nervous. "You know what hurts the most?" I began. "It wasn't just that you left. It was the silence, the void you left behind, the feeling that everything we had was disposable to you. I spent years trying to understand, blaming myself, hating myself for having believed so much." She knelt in front of me, her eyes full of tears. "You weren't disposable. You were the love of my life. And if I'm here today, sick, separated, trying to start over, it's because I understood too late the value of your presence." That broke me down, because despite the pain, I knew she was telling the truth. I left the letters on my lap, looked into her eyes, and asked, almost in a whisper, "Do you really think we could have a chance? Now? After everything that's happened?" She smiled, a sad but sincere smile. "I don't know, but I think if there's any chance at all, it starts here, now. By being honest, without promising happy endings, but by living what we still can." I got emotional, because it wasn't a plea to start over. It was an invitation to live in the present, with no guarantees, no fantasies, just the raw, naked, and imperfect truth. That afternoon ended with a hug, a long, silent embrace, heavy with everything that had gone unsaid for 10 years. And in that instant, I realized that loving someone is also about allowing pain to coexist with affection, letting anger walk side by side with longing, that the past doesn't have to dictate the future. We parted ways there, with no plans, but with something new being born, a possibility, and that alone was more than I could have imagined when I answered that first message. If this story has moved you so far, comment. I would have kept the letters too. And if you feel this kind of love deserves to be told, subscribe to the channel now. It took me 2 days to open the first letter. It sat on my nightstand like a weight, not in my hands, but on my heart. It was as if each envelope held a parallel timeline, a life we could have lived, but didn't. When I finally tore the paper, my hands were shaking. Her handwriting was still the same, slightly slanted, with loopy G's and tiny A's. Today, I dreamed you were smiling at me from across the street. I didn't cross. I just stood there watching. I woke up missing you and angry at myself. I read it aloud and cried, because she was still inside me, not like before, like a burning passion, but like a presence that resists time. I read them all, one by one. In some, she talked about simple things, as if we were still intimate. I hope you're eating better. I wonder if you still listen to Anna Carolina late at night. In others, she confessed deep pains. Today, I passed by the bookstore where we hid from the rain. I had to run to the bathroom so I wouldn't cry in front of everyone. And between confessions, fears, and memories, there was something that repeated in every single one. Love. A constant love, even in silence, even in error. And that dismantled me. Because as much as I had moved on, dated other people, tried to start over, no story had ever healed the hole she left. I started writing too, but not to her, for myself. About what I was feeling, about how the reunion had turned everything upside down, about the fear of forgiving and losing her again, and about the even bigger fear of not forgiving and letting what could be our last chance slip away. I didn't know if she was ready for a new beginning. I didn't even know if I was, but I wanted to see if it was possible for us to walk together, even if we stumbled. So I decided to call, not to talk, but to set up another meeting, in the same place as the first time, the trail. She arrived on time. She wore a wine-colored coat and carried a large, old-fashioned umbrella with a dark wooden handle. The sky was overcast, but it wasn't raining. We walked in silence for several long minutes, until I stopped at the same spot as before. I opened my backpack and took out my own letters. I wrote these for myself, but I wanted to read them to you. She nodded, sitting on a damp rock. I knelt in front of her and began. Today I realized I don't hate you, that what hurts me is what we didn't live, that the absence of possibilities hurts more than the mistakes we made, and that maybe I still want to find out who we are now, not who we were. She cried silently, holding her breath, as if each of my words was a needle stitching together the broken pieces of the past. When I finished, there was no reply, just a kiss on the back of my hand, long, full of weight and tenderness. We didn't need to say anything else there. We had already said too much. The walk back was light, almost serene. She dropped me off at home and, before leaving, said, "I want to show you a place tomorrow. Can I?" I nodded, and that yes was like walking through a door I had locked myself years ago. The next day, we drove to the coast, a simple place with a small rented house facing the sea. She said she went there whenever she needed to think. The porch smelled of salt spray, and the windows were always ajar. "This is where I imagine what it would have been like to live with you." The sentence came out like a confession, and I found myself smiling for the first time in days. She made coffee. We sat on the floor with cushions and an old blanket. The ocean outside made a gentle sound, like a constant whisper, and it was there that she told me the rest. The cancer is under control, but the doctors don't know if it will come back. The words were spoken with serenity, but also with a kind of acceptance that cut me to the core. I don't want to live what time I have left in fear, or alone, or in silence. I looked at her, trying to understand if this was her asking me to be her girlfriend, a plea for companionship, or just a cry for love. And I responded the only way I could, by resting my head on her shoulder. We stayed like that for hours, listening to the sea, breathing together, without rush, without promises. On the way home, she handed me an envelope. "Only read this when you feel ready." I kept it, unopened, for days, until in the middle of the night, I woke up missing her. I opened it. Inside was a single note. "If I have to go first, I want you to know you were my home." I cried myself to sleep, and when I woke up, I knew that no matter what came next, she would have a space inside me. A space that didn't demand perfection, only presence. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real love is. The kind that welcomes even the imperfect. Time started to move differently after that weekend at the coast. There was no label between us, no promise spoken aloud, but there was a constant, silent presence that filled the old voids. She wrote to me every day, even when we saw each other. Little notes left on the fridge, inside my purse, or stuck with a magnet on the bathroom mirror. Today, I dreamed we grew old together. You bring me peace. If I disappear tomorrow, I want you to remember this smile. And these words both wounded and healed me at the same time. I knew the illness was still there, that the future was uncertain. But I decided not to live waiting for the end, but rather to feel each moment as a beginning. We started revisiting places from our past. The stand where we bought used books. The alley where we had our first stolen kiss. The tree at the university where we carved our initials into the trunk with a pen that had run out of ink. But the most striking moment was when we went back to our old dorm apartment, now converted into a sort of hotel. We got permission to visit the room that had been ours for such a short time, but which held an entire universe. When I walked in there, I felt as if time had folded in on itself. The walls were different, the furniture too, but the energy, that was still ours. We stood in silence for long minutes, until she lay down on the floor, opened her arms, and said, "I was happy here. For just a few days, but intensely." After that day, something inside her began to change. Her body grew weaker, her smiles slower. But the sweetness with which she looked at me remained the same. One morning, she asked me to sit with her on her porch. She was pale, a blanket over her shoulders, and a cup of ginger tea in her hands. "I need to tell you one last thing," she said calmly. "In the years I was away, I tried to erase you. But everything, absolutely everything that made me happy, led me back to you." The words came out slowly, fragile, but loaded with sincerity. "When I got sick, I asked God for only one thing, to see you one more time, and He gave me so much more than that." She reached for the backpack beside her chair and took out a simple, recycled paper box. "This isn't a marriage proposal. I'm not that foolish. But it's a symbol." Inside were 2 silver rings. "If one day I'm no longer here, I want you to wear yours always. Not as a memory of what we were, but of what we tried to be. Of what we dared to live despite so much fear." I cried, as I have rarely cried in my life, because there, facing the real possibility of loss, I understood what it was to love someone deeply, without demanding anything in return, just to love. In the following months, we took care of each other. I drove her to appointments. She made me laugh with old stories. We made plans for the present, small things, a new recipe, a movie, a full day of rain, and even a Spotify playlist called Us on Good Days. And there were many good days, until the day no one wants to see arrive. A Sunday, clear sky, birds singing. She passed away in her sleep, with a faint smile on her lips. She left an envelope on her bedside table, in the same familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, it's because I couldn't give you one last hug, but I want you to know, you were the miracle I prayed for in silence. Thank you for not letting me die alone. I kept that note with the letters. I buried a part of my heart that day, but a new part of me also blossomed. Because now I understand, not all love has to last forever to be eternal. And she was my eternal, my home for months, my absence for years, my healing in the end. Today, whenever someone asks if I've ever truly loved, I smile. Because yes, I have, intensely, painfully. And even though it ended, it still lives inside me. If this story touched you in some way, comment below. I would still love even with the end. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, subscribe to the channel now. Because every time you share a video like this, you help other people understand that loving someone, even when it hurts, is still the most beautiful way to live.